Welcome back, YouTube followers. It's another one from G Body Auto. So working on a 2012 Infinity M37X. So we're doing a hub bearing. Here in the Midwest with these potholes, they're easily will mess up your hub bearings and your rims. I done had these rims repaired, I don't know how many times, like 3 or 4 times in the last 3 years. So I always take them off for the winter time, but they just don't repair the roads like they should. And they won't, well, it's rare to have them reimburse you for damage. Anyway, so we're doing a hub bearing assembly on this. Went to eBay, got the new one right here. Actually, when I got it, the box looked like that. So I did let them know in case it's damaged, they will replace it. It could have had more packing in it, but I think they just tossed it around. I think it was FedEx or UPS, one of the two. They tossed it around pretty bad. So I never really got one this bad condition for the packaging. Anyway, that's the new one. So I already took off the rim. I had custom lug nuts. So I believe the original ones is probably a 19. And over time, if you're switching the wheels, these will strip out. As you can see, mine is kind of round. This is still good, but a couple of them were really bad. So beware of that when you're taking off your wheels. It's close to a, yeah. That socket, that's a 22. So it's probably actually, yeah, it should be a 22. Or probably a 7/8. But anyway, so you'll take off your whole caliper assembly instead of taking that brake off and piece by piece. Just take off the whole caliper. That way you're skipping some steps. So that one is the same 22 I just showed you. So on the back of here, you'll see 2. That's the one I already took off. That one there is one up top right there. So you take those 2 off. Make sure you get a hanger, a bungee, or something, because that caliper will hang, and you don't want that to hang just on the brake assembly, brake hose, I should say, because you could break that. So you take apart that. That was a 12 millimeter. Comes out pretty easy. Just set that to the side, and I got a little bungee here. So I'm gonna take off this other 22 inch, and then we'll go from there. All right, y'all, so I took off that top bolt, and I had a bunch that's way too long, but you do what you gotta do, wrap it up, make it shorter, just make sure it's supported. You can see I got plenty of room there, so it won't fall and tear that hose. Once you tear that hose, you have to bleed the whole system, go to the parts store, all that. So just save yourself some time and move that to the side. All right, so I did unbolt that. Don't think I really needed to, but I did it just in case I need to move this over. So as you can see, I really don't need to. So I'm just gonna set that bolt back on there loosely until if I need to. So now you just slide your rotor off. Somebody didn't put that cotter pin back in. So you some people say you should or you shouldn't. I mean, not you shouldn't, but you don't have to. I've seen both cases. I'm not gonna say you don't have to, but if you got, you should put it in there, because if anything happens and that is not tight enough or end up loosening up over time, that cotter pin stops it right there. If you don't have it there, it can just back all the way off. It's rare that will happen, because if you talk at the specs, it shouldn't happen, but you never know. So you can go to your parts store place, go to Harbor Freight. If you don't do this much, just go to the parts store and get the car pin. That way you save yourself and whoever else may have to get the car after you. They just go right in there, you knock them in, and then you bend them around. So I'll show you that later. But yeah, so you just slide your rotor off. I've changed this enough where I actually upgraded. As you can see, I got cross drilled rotors. I upgraded that a couple years ago. Well, actually when we first got the car. So yours might be a little stuck. Get you a mallet hammer, or whatever you have around and just hit it from the back. You know, sometimes you see that rust around there. So that can hang up your rotor. So now you take off your lug, your hub nut. I think that's a 32. So I gotta go find mine and then I'll be back. Yeah, so that was a 32. So, you know, you put that on there, and then you just, you know, hopefully you got an impact. If you don't have an impact, it's gonna be a little bit more tough time, of course. But there's that. And yeah, there should be 4 bolts that hold on the whole hub, actually. So you can actually see the 2 top ones right there. There's 2 at the top, and then there's 2 at the bottom there. So, you know, you go around the back. Get my light on. So that's the ones at the bottom there. Those 2. Then there's 2 at the top. Hopefully you can see those. Yeah, there goes one of them. There goes one of them. Other ones around there. So you might have to turn your wheel to get to 1 or 2 of them. But I'll get that done and I'll be back in a sec. All right, guys. So I did get 3 of the 4 out with my wheel turned this way for that last one. The last one at the bottom on the other side. If you can see that. That one over there. You will have to turn your wheel the opposite way. So, and that is a 17 millimeter for those hub bolts. So I got, you see the 2, the 3rd one. So I'm gonna turn my wheel and then get that last one out. Okay, man, that last one was pretty tough. I could not use that same 17 long socket. Had to get a shorty with a swivel because you got that right behind that socket. So the socket will come about right there and you won't be able to back it off. So you need a swivel. And it was still tough. So make sure you probably want to do that one first. That way it's easier to get it out because that was the last one holding it on. So sometimes the last one has a little bit more trouble getting out of any bolt. So, and that I used 11/16 if you don't have a 17 millimeter. So now this thing should, I might have to knock it out for the hammer from the back. So I gotta find my shorty hammer so we can get this out. All right, so I just got a shorty sludge hammer. If you don't have one of those, just use whatever hammer you got around. And then you just kind of hit it on this back side. You don't have a whole lot of room, but hit on that and it should start moving. There you go. So I hit my little backing plate dust cover. I'll hit that back. So at this point, you just pull it on out. So I'll set this down. See if I can. My backing plate. All right, so y'all see it came out. You know, I had to get a couple more hits. Once it broke loose from the mount, it still was kind of stuck on that axle. So this is it right there. Plenty of rust, of course. That's typical. But so with these, can't even hear it, but sometimes you can hear and feel the grittiness once it get really bad. So, you know, if you get that hum while you're driving, that little slight hum, you wonder what it is. Sometimes it's kind of like a woo 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 noise, and then sometimes it's just a woo. And sometimes when you turn left or right, it may get deeper or go away when it first start happening. So if you turn your wheel to the left from the driver's side, if you turn to the left, it should get louder because all the pressure goes to the right side, to the right wheel, and it'll show if the bearings are, you know, going bad. And if you turn to the right and it goes away, that shows you right there it's less weight on the right tire, front tire, so it goes away. So that's how you can kind of tell which bearing is bad. So with mine's, you know, when I turned to the left, it got worse because all the weight went to the right side. So anyway, what I forgot to do, I almost broke that. I forgot to take out my speed sensor, y'all. Thankfully, you know, it didn't break. That's one thing you have to remember before you slide this out, this hub bearing out. Take your speed sensor off, which I'm gonna do right now. I can't believe I forgot that. I think that's a 10 millimeter, I believe, or 12. Let me find out. Yeah, it's a 10. Wow, thankfully. A lot of people forget that, including myself. I just did. Yeah, you forget that, that could break. You had to go to the parts store, once again, buy a speed sensor. So, that should be a 10. 10 in there. Yeah, thankfully that didn't break. Man, it might have broke. Let me see here. I don't see no pieces. It might have came out just enough where it didn't. Wow. Anyway, unfortunate. I gotta double check that, make sure it didn't break. It doesn't look like it did. So anyway, there's your hub and the new one, you know, it's gonna go right in there. Take your speed sensor out first. Like it says, already should be out before you remove the old one. So don't forget that step, like I did. So anyway, you want to grease this up some, you know, while you have it open. You know, take you some grease, gear grease or something like that. That's what I usually use. Whatever's around. Gear grease is good. They have other lubricants. That way it won't be corroded. You know, it'll last longer, getting easier to take out the next time it needs to be replaced. So I'm gonna grab some grease and do that. All right, there you have it. They got the NIC's stuff you usually would use. You can see the white that somebody used when they first put that on there. So I just use what I have, you know what I'm saying? It's not gonna hurt. I grease my axle some, you know, the where the nut goes around. That way, sometimes, you know, over time, the stuff heats up, cool off, heats up, and sometimes this can turn into one solid piece, or some of those threads can start welding itself together. And then you end up stripping the threads out of that. So it's just a precaution, you know. It doesn't hurt anything to grease everything up. If anything, it helps you. So make sure you just use that as much as possible. And then, you know, you ain't got to worry about it. I just use the high temp grease. You know, I've been having that bucket for a while, so it helps. So yeah, you just go backwards, you know, on your install. And you slide that. Let's see if I can get a decent enough angle. A decent enough angle for you guys. Just got a stand. Something like that. Anyway, in your backing plate, you know, of course, you put that back on. Goes like that. And I did, you know, if you bend that, just hit it back with a hammer or something solid. Get it back in place. Then of course, make sure you have to make sure you line up where that speed sensor goes. So, which is these slots. So make sure that slot is lined up with your speed sensor. I'm over here putting it on backwards. All right, so you should be able to see. I'll try to show you. There's a slot where that. Try to line it up. You can see in the hole a little bit. That's the slot down there. So I made sure that line up and go right into where that space is at. That way, when your speed sensor go in there, it doesn't break. All right, so I'm gonna get this tightened up. Just do the opposite. Put your speed sensor in there and tighten up your bolts. But sometimes you might have to try a couple slots on the spline of your axle because all of them not going to line up the same. So just turn it a little bit where they will line up to those top bolt holes and make sure your speed sensor is lined up. I don't know if I can kind of show you. You see where that speed sensor slot is right there. So I just kind of pretty much lined it up. And then slowly put it in there, and watch it. You can watch it from the inside, how it looks. Like, you can see it going in there. So it's kind of lined up with a hole, and you just work it until it goes all the way in. So, make sure you just look at it with a light. And that hole, make sure you're all lined up good. And there's that slot. Because if you've seen all shiny metal, then you're not lined up right. That means that hole is blocked. And you'll know when you put your speed sensor in there, it's not going to fit. So just make sure you line it up right. I was trying to see if I could show y'all that speed sensor on the back side. You can kind of see it down there. You pay attention to see that light moving. It's kind of hard with this bungee right in the way. So anyway, that's me sliding the speed sensor in the place. So you'll be able to look. It's better with your eyes than this camera, but you'll be able to see that on the back side to ensure that you got it in the right spot. So I'm finished putting these bolts back in, these 4 bolts to the hub, and then I will tighten down this center lug. Hey, a little side note, when you're doing that last one at the bottom I told you about earlier, when you have to turn your wheel back towards the driver's side, yeah, that one right there. For the hub, the last hub bolt, when you have this extension on, the swivel on there, still don't try to impact it this like that. Get straight as possible, and then take it off, and when you put it back on, it's gonna flop around, so you gotta be really careful. Them things can fly off and hit you in the eye, head, anything. So much torque. So get it on there straight as possible. It only needs a little bit of a curve to get to that bolt. So just get on there straight as possible. Put some force behind it. That way the thing won't flop apart. But once you do that, you'll be just good as gold. So I just want to make sure you guys knew about that, because that's what I ran into the first time when I took it off. So yeah, now we're to the point of putting that hub nut back on. And then you have your cotter pin. So I gotta find the right size here. All right, there you have it. Got the cotter pin back in there. I just use, I believe I use a 3/16. The 1/4 inch was too thick to go through the hole, so 3/16 of an inch, and it was 3 inches actually too long. But I just, as you can see, I cut each end off, so I cut about 1 inch off each end. So it's easy to cut. Just get you a pair of snips, you know, and get that done. So now I'm gonna tighten up my speed sensor. Let's see here. Get a little bit of a, there you go. So yeah, and then you put your caliper assembly back on and put your wheel back on. In this case, I'm gonna change the wheels back out to the factory because this vehicle is being sold. So let me get that back on and I'll be right back. All right guys, so now before you put your caliper back on, of course, put your rotor back on. But to make it easier for you, sometimes you put your rotor back on, it's flopping around while you try to get your caliper. So just take one lug nut, hand tighten it where it's not moving. It locks it in place, makes it so much easier to put your caliper on. Also, remember that brake line. So when we initially started off, even though we didn't really need it off all the way, it's good to back this thing off